Hey, Woolie, you played Dead Space last year, didn't you?
Sure did. In fact, I just said, tell me about how good Dead Space is.
It's great, is what it is.
Yeah.
So, aside from, I'll just get it out of the way. Aside from some very minor stuttering on PC, which has not been the end of the world. It's just a slight annoyance. Uh, Dead Space is great. It is a fantastic recreation of all the things that were good in Dead Space 1. It is not like um some of the recent Capcom remakes where they're
Mm.
like, "Hey, we've remade RE2," and it's like evoking the feeling and the style and all that. No, this is a room to room remake with extra bits.
See,
So,
I don't know though, Pat. I heard that the flesh monsters have gone woke.
all right, let's do it. All right. All right. So, all right, let's do it. All right. So, in Dead Space, there are three things. There are three things that are combining to be this bizarre woke space nonsense. Number one is that the signs on the bathrooms have been like they have the male female symbol and then they have the gender inclusive symbol on the Ishimura bathrooms,
Sure.
which is like extra silly to be mad about because those were always unisex bathrooms. The bathrooms in the USG Ishimura are one side has urinals, side just has stalls, but they're like you walk in and just take one or the other, and they loop around in the back. They're not even fully separated.
Not
They
on.
were they were always gender inclusive bathrooms. They just didn't have the little sign on the door.
And that's why the Normandy is the good old faithful ship to be trusted, because Edie knows
Um,
how to keep it classic.
the second one,
Yeah. To the
the
point where
second one
actually,
is
there's a whole bit, I don't know if you remember it, where Javik is like, where Edie or Joker, I think, says like, hey, like Javik seems to not like use the he just uses whichever bathroom. Like,
yeah.
someone needs to tell him something about that. It's like, I do they? I guess whatever. He's just against
Um,
animals, right?
uh,
Anyways, okay.
Following up with that, the game has, I don't know, the game has a feature that they put time and work into that feels super pointless. And on the one hand, I can be like, I suppose I appreciate it for the people that appreciate it themselves, but it seems violently useless. And I don't like, so there is a content warning system in Dead Space in which if you turn it on, instead of just the hey, there's depictions of explicit violence and gore at the very beginning of the game, so be
Okay.
careful. They will also hit you with a content warning in a little box in the upper right corner of the screen that will be like incoming depiction of self-harm or medical malpractice or
Oh.
suicide or
Huh.
violent dismemberment up in the upper right corner of the screen and be like, okay, get ready, you're about
Right
to see
before it
some
happens.
shit.
Huh.
It's obviously like a spoiler, so I turned it on, saw what it did, and turned it off.
Interesting.
People are suspecting that it's actually for content creators to like edit their videos around
Around
stuff, but I
moments,
don't think
yeah.
that's the case.
That
There's
no,
also
no. That seems like it's a heads up, but I mean, it's Dead Space.
so, and then the second one is that they will actually there's a content block in which they will put it's like they're putting like a projector screen in front of the thing that's happening, and it like blurs out what's occurring in a massive block. So like if somebody like commits suicide, there'll just be a gigantic blur filter in front of them to
Hmm.
keep you from seeing it. And
Okay.
again, it's like, okay, I can understand the intention here. However, one of the things they added to this game. So first of all, Dead Space is about dismembering enemies into
It's
pieces with
really violent. Now,
with
yeah.
violent mechanical implements.
Yeah. Yeah.
On top of that, one of the things they added to the game that's not just fancy graphics is they have what they're calling a peel system in which necromorphs have a variety of layers. They have clothes, skin, muscle, deeper muscle, and then
Sinew,
skeleton,
bone.
right? All the way down to skeleton. And that's their health bar, because the original game there's no way to tell just how much health a limb
Yep.
had.
Right.
In this one, as you're chipping away at it, you're watching it chunk off and be like,
Okay.
oh, that part of their arm is being chunked.
Okay.
When you use the force glove, sorry, when you use the force gun, you can deglove an entire necromorph down to the skeleton.
Wow.
It's so insanely violent.
That sounds ridiculously gory. Yeah.
It's probably the most violent game in terms of active gore that I've ever seen in my life. And there's no way to reconcile, like, I don't want to see the scene of a guy beating his head into the wall until he dies, with the sequence immediately after that, which is I'm using a table saw to chop baby corpses into bits.
Yeah. If I had to guess, that's kind of where I guess I'd go, is like, if the thought process was essentially, this is for somebody who might not want to see that specific context while the rest of the game remains fine. But it does definitely kind of remind me of like, I think, like, I don't know if you remember, like, we might have talked about this like a long time ago, but it was like during your playthrough of like The Walking Dead. I think it was season 2, where it starts out where like a dog attacks Clem.
Yeah.
And someone was particularly upset by that because it involved like a dog.
Dog murder.
Getting killed that attacked you. But that content was sandwiched and bookended in between murdering zombies left and right, and in this case the dog was the particular point of tension, whereas the humans, I guess being zombies, were not.
See that I can understand. I genuinely can, because Walking Dead is using like a stylized look. It's not going for a realistic depiction of blood and violence and gore, and thus doesn't have like a kind of visceral reaction. Whereas somebody stabbing a dog to death, regardless of its art style, is still going to be like fucked, particularly with the sound effect. With Dead Space, you're dealing with the most realistic depiction of violent dismemberment and gore I've ever seen. And then the in-game contexts for, the medical stuff, or the suicide stuff, is like generally tame by comparison to the moment-to-moment gameplay.
Yeah, I guess the opt-in on what you have to accept alongside something like Dead Space is so extreme that, like, it would be unusual if a particular style or context depiction would, be something you'd be uncomfortable with, but like the rest of it would not be. That would be an odd. But then again, the brain works in all kinds of ways, and there could be exactly that type of person that specifically wants to avoid that type of thing. I don't know.
I don't think it's very useful. Also, some of those moments are story relevant to a point where they tell you where to go or whatever.
Yeah.
So none of the sound has been dropped. It basically just turns all of these moments into audio logs, which kind of doesn't affect their impact at all, because the visuals was never the problem. It was never like when you're talking about Mercer, the evil doctor, like, fucking up his patients and being an evil piece of shit. Like, you're not actually seeing him do anything really genuinely awful. It's all kind of implied. So hiding that doesn't really even take any of the sting off, because the gore in these moments were never the problem. It was the situation. It was like, oh, this evil doctor's doing horrible experiments. That's awful. Now it's just this evil doctor is doing horrible experiments behind a screen, but it doesn't change any of that core context because the audio still has to be there. It just seems fundamentally pointless. I don't really understand If anyone is actually genuinely like not if anyone's improved, that's not how I want to say. If anyone is out there and goes, actually, I really appreciate this because of X, hit me up on Twitter at Pat Stares at and let me know, because I'm baffled as to who this would actually apply to.
Well, so that's kind of what I guess I'm left thinking about, because I didn't know about that stuff, but I guess I'm just like, if you're opting into Dead Space, like you're or if you're someone who would rather, I guess, not, it seems like it would go hand in hand in a lot of cases, but maybe I don't know something, maybe it doesn't, I mean, if in movies, certainly, if you go into a genre that's like super fucked up, and well, I guess you have like different rated versions that get edited for different contexts, but usually an airplane version of a movie or a PG-13 TV edit of something is so that kids can watch it or whatever. In this case though, it's not the same, because I'm thinking about something where so for example, right, two things that come to mind are, one, obviously, the audio logs from Ground Zeroes, the bad one, right, and then two, the conversation in loincloths in Disco Elysium, the bad one, right? Those are and I could see where you're like, the rest of this game, without those, doesn't seem to hit anywhere close to this level of
the rest of the game's shit. Like a 6 or a 7, and this is a 10.
This is a 10 in both those cases, so if those moments, like especially Disco, goes like, hey, by the way, you really should know, warning, right, before you continue with this prompt, then it makes sense because of how out of the range it is with the rest of the content.
Yeah, with Dead Space, everything that you're doing most of the game is more violent than everything you're encountering as part of its narrative.
Interesting. Okay, so that's what that's about then.
It's undodgeable.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just like, I don't know if you ever got caught, but like when one of the babies like hits you with the grab attack and your shake off kills them, like Isaac just like stomping a fetus into the ground, like it's not. It doesn't work. It's too much.
And of course, when you come across people who are not like fucking necromorphed, that are just normal bodies or people that are on their way out, and they die, it's like, oh fuck, that's sad. That's and then like you can still turn them into chicken nuggets because of the way the fucking limb system works.
I think the absolute weirdest part is that, like, if they wanted to go down this route, it should have also come with a feature that turns off the peeling system and turns off blood, right? Like having the content warning system for all the scripted parts of the game, but then not having it for the thing you're doing for 95% of it is strange. If there was a toggle you could turn on that turns off blood, this would actually make way more sense, because you could turn that game down to a PG-13.
I'll tell you right now, I could use a content warning for toilet sputter. The toilet that fucking shoots out goop at you. There's a toilet that you walk into the bathroom, and the toilet itself just spews fucking shit at you, and it splashes, and it's horrifying. And it got me hard.
Somebody in the chat referred to that as like the emotional damage toilet. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I found it and was like, oh, yeah, that's what you're talking about.
Phrasing. It got me. It fucked me up.
Yeah. So back to the actual game. Back to the actual game. The game looks incredible. It has all the control options you could ever want. It has all tons of legitimate accessibility options, subtitling, that kind of thing. What they've done is they've made a very, very, very accurate recreation of Dead Space 1. Like every single room is there and accounted for. Every single encounter is there and accounted for. What they've done is they've expanded it in a couple ways that make sense. You no longer have power node doors. They decided that keeping one node on you at all times sucked shit. Um,
Okay.
what they've replaced those with is security clearance. And that goes hand in hand with the way that the game's actually structured. So the game is no longer a series of discrete levels. The game is no longer here's level 1, here's level 2, here's level 3 that changes when you get on the tram. What happens now is when you finish the hangar section, for example, and you have to go to medical, the tram is already gone to medical, and you now have to crawl through the underbelly of the Ishimura in order to get to medical manually, which at that point you can unlock the tram. It's now one big seamless level. As a result, they've taken a lot of the node doors, and what they've done is they've tied it to security clearance that you earn as you go through the game and you unlock, and you'll be able to backtrack to earlier areas to unlock those doors with your security clearance, which now include having new types of weapon upgrades.
Does that mean
little bit of light Metroid?
Does that mean that doors that you would have been able to open via node earlier, you have to wait for longer predetermined
Not necessarily.
Progress points?
Some are just open. Some have been replaced with security doors, and some are brand new. Like there's a legitimate expansion of the ship in some areas.
Okay.
In addition, they've given you way more things to use your nodes on. So in the original, you had like, let's say the plasma cutter, and it was all statistical, and there'd be empty nodes. There'd be like power and then empty and then capacity. Now what they have done is that you have a limited selection of nodes with no empty slots, so that you're always getting something per level up. And there are 3 findable types of upgrades that you can acquire throughout the game that will unlock another branch of nodes and then a special feature. So for the plasma cutter, for example, you get 3. One is the ability to have your plasma cutter shots light enemies on fire. The second of which is to dramatically increase the amount that it can hold. And the third is the ability to weigh down the plasma cutter to be much heavier, so that when you use your punch, it'll knock over almost any normal-sized enemy to the floor and prone them.
Okay.
These are all features that were not available in the original Dead Space.
So those things that you find, they unlock branches. They don't give you those abilities.
No, they don't. They just unlock more branches. And that's for every single weapon. So like the Ripper has its old functionality of saw blade and then shooting a saw blade. But it now has the secondary functionality of when you shoot the saw blade, you can upgrade it to ricochet off walls. More and more and more times.
Okay.
And it ricochets off walls in a way that like locks on to enemies.
Okay. Smart ricochet. Nice.
They have rebalanced all the guns, so the flamethrower is actually super good.
Oh, I imagine
the flamethrower is now super good. It's not just good in its general purpose. It also has a secondary fire that is now you toss down a flame wall, and the flame wall is impassable. Enemies cannot walk through it.
On the secondary.
They get completely stun locked.
Okay.
Which makes it incredible. The force gun, which was useless, like totally useless in the original, now, depending on the enemy's health, will deglove them a layer. Which means that if you hit somebody point blank with the force gun, you'll knock them to the floor. And if you did a lot of damage, you will totally skeletonize them, which means that when you switch to your cutter or your Ripper, they'll just instantly die.
Right.
Stuff like that.
So it's basically knocking shields and armor down off of them, essentially. I just want to go back to the whole security clearance thing. So, like, the rooms you're coming across, on average, are you getting beeped out? You can't open this yet?
It is maybe 5% of all total doors in the game have any form of security clearance.
Okay. Because, like, for example, like, let's say you take, like, the first 3 node doors, that, like, if you walked with a node, you'd be good. When you encounter them in this, are you clear to get through as the first time you get to them?
It depends. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes they're security clearance. Sometimes they are turned into puzzles in how to get through. Like there's one that I think used to be a no door that I now have to go around to a broken window and move boxes out of the way so I can shoot the lock open. But like,
Okay.
as somebody who liked the node door stuff,
Yeah.
it is a genuine improvement. There's like
Okay.
no downside.
Okay.
In addition, and this is where it really comes in. One of the reasons, so remember when you go back to medical a second time, you do medical in the beginning and you do it about halfway through the game.
Yeah.
You come back to medical. Because you have new clearance, it lets them have a bunch of lockers and boxes that you weren't able to open on your first trip through that are now available to you so that they don't have to repopulate the area with ammo and whatnot again.
Okay. I asked because I love the nodes, and I'm like, it sounds like they fixed a thing that didn't need fixing, but if it's
So
better, then that's good.
the nodes had one big problem, and the problem is that you solved it by carrying one node on you at all times, and there was always a node inside.
Yes.
So
The reward inside always felt good to get more than you spent.
but
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that's a key that functionally doesn't actually exist because everyone always does it. So what's the point? On top of that, they have added a respec to your guns. You pay a nominal 5K fee, and you can pull all the nodes off whatever gun you're using. So you can. So
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
you put 5 into the pulse rifle, and you're done with the pulse rifle. Fucking rip them all out, put them right back into the cutter.
Guys, the moral of today's episode is allow power-up refunds so that people can try shit out.
It's great. Allow it.
It maximizes fun, and then you still want a complete set if you get the chance to, but at the very least, you get to enjoy yourself as much as possible in the moment to moment.
Mm-hmm. And so the contiguous layout of the ship, as well as the security doors, also combines with the fact that the game has new content in terms of like legitimate side quests. And they're all new. They are stuff like following Nicole's trip around the ship and trying to figure out what she was doing when it was going bad.
Okay.
Trying to figure out what Mercer was doing with his experiments. And at the end of the day, they appear to all lead to some very significant upgrade. Like one of the side quests rewarded me with a version of stasis that seems to last twice as long and do damage while it's working.
Interesting. Did they change stasis and oxygen at all?
Yeah, they did. Stasis is worse when you start. Like it is weaker in its base form in Dead Space 1. TK is the same, but Dead Space 2 had metal rods that like you could insta kill enemies with that was not in Dead Space 1. That is now in Dead Space 1. You can pull pipes off the wall, you can pull necromorph blades off their arms and use that as a weapon. The upgrades that you'll be doing to stasis increase the size of the bubble. So I have not personally been upgrading it, but I assume that when you upgrade it to the max, you're firing out like a stasis wave.
Orb, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like a big fat orb.
Cool.
Yeah, overall it's fantastic. Very accurate. It's been improved on and expanded in all the right areas.
Oxygen as well?
Now. Yeah, oxygen as well.
Okay.
The areas that sucked shit, they completely overhauled. The number one area that they even showed off before the game came out was that they have completely scrapped and did completely over was the asteroid spacewalk to the guns. It now is a completely different sequence in which the spacewalk and the gun targeting has been combined into one section. You have your 0G movement from Dead Space 2, like where you're free floating, and you're walking up to gigantic guns, locking them onto your weapons, and using your character's aiming to teach the guns how to shoot asteroids out of the sky.
That's cool. Okay. There you go.
instead of that fucking
Yeah.
horrible turret minigame.
I didn't mind the spacewalk, but the turret was abysmal and miserable.
I don't know
Yeah.
if you ever saw or anybody told you, but like on the hardest difficulty in that game, like the asteroid
One
sequence.
fail, you told me. Yeah, one
Yeah,
asteroid through
it's
is a
a
failure.
single asteroid through is death, and it was
Yeah.
the worst. It was absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
And
that
last
was...
but not least, if you beat the impossible difficulty, they added Dead Space 2's hand cannon into it, which is a foam finger, like at a baseball game, that Isaac goes pew 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 with his mouth, and is the most powerful gun in the game.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, not last but not least. Actually, last but not least, New Game Plus is there from the get-go, and New Game Plus has a new enemy layout.
Oh.
It has
Remix,
it is being built for your New Game Plus character, all the way to the point where if there is a secret ending in New Game Plus that you can achieve.
Interesting. First room has a brute.
I don't know about that. I haven't gotten there. But it apparently remixes enemies from the end of the game into the beginning of the game because you're playing New Game Plus, and you should be able to deal with them.
Nice.
And as well, the game has... You remember Left 4 Dead and all those games that have, like, the director, which is, like, trying to... like
the asymmetrical multiplayer system. Yeah, director system. Yes.
Yeah, look at your gameplay and try and figure out what it needs.
How's your aim? How many bullets do you waste? Okay, let's
Yeah,
compensate.
so because you're backtracking more and you're wandering around the ship, they have used it to occasionally turn the lights off on you, to spawn enemies where there weren't enemies there before and aren't guaranteed to be enemies.
Okay.
So, like... I died and reloaded a save only to not encounter the thing that killed me.
Interesting. Do survival horror fans generally like director systems to be aggressive?
Yes.
Okay.
Genuinely, yes.
So,
because it's a little tiny randomizer that helps make playthroughs a little fresher.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say a half step between like a rogue, like in the whatever that term means these days, but like not really, just a little bit of a change. Okay.
Dead Space already had a variation of that using Resident Evil 4's ammo system, where you're going to get ammo for the stuff that you have on you. Yeah, it's great. Game's great. Super good.
I guess the way that could go wrong is like everything about the RE games, or at least RE2 and stuff I remember you were telling me about, is that the bullets you get are balanced for the challenges you encounter, but never so much as to allow you to fully deal with everything. So
yeah, unless you know where every single thing is. If you know where absolutely every single thing in a Resident Evil game is, you can in fact deal with all of it.
Okay.
However, actually finding all of that shit is not to be guaranteed. Especially in the older games, in which like there'd be items that weren't even literally on screen, they'd be like hidden in the foreground kind of stuff.
So what do you mean when you say Isaac talks?
I mean, he literally fucking speaks. He's a character.
He's talking back to everybody who's calling into him.
Yeah, so in Dead Space 2 and 3, he had a voice, which now makes him being totally mute in Dead Space 1 kind of strange.
Well, he grunts when you stop.
Yeah, but it's like they're talking to him like he's a robot, because he kind of is. But now what they've done is they've split some of the lines that Kendra and Hammond would have about fixing the ship and given it to him. And there's more back and forth, as well as he's just a more active character. And it's like, you remember in Dead Space 1 where Nicole shows up and she's like, "Hey Isaac, help me, I'm gonna open the door," and Isaac just fucking stands there totally mute.
Yeah,
that was a little strange. Now they talk briefly.
So I interpreted his character in 1, especially because you could look at his face and when you're sitting there, as like he's just like a weird mute guy, right? I don't know why. What? It's because of the setting, right? If you're playing a happy-go-lucky RPG and your character says nothing, then you're like, oh well, I'm a silent protagonist. If you're playing a horror game and your character says nothing, it kind of feels like you're a weird mute guy. Yeah, something's odd about him, but that's kind of the feeling I got.
Yeah, I felt that he was fine in Dead Space 1 being mute, but Dead Space 2 was better because he could speak and he was no longer like a robot man.
Okay.
And it as they went on, it is now retroactively strange if he didn't say anything in Dead Space 1.
I guess my biggest concerns would be when he's being greeted with like the horror of his ex and shit. Like, how hard are we going there with new dialogue and cutscenes? You know, like, is he having full on breakdowns to the mental trauma that is, you know,
Well, I don't
teasing
know if you
him?
remember, but that's all like the ass end of the game. I'm not there yet.
Right. Okay.
They also do a couple things that are like they're not necessary, but they are nice. So in Dead Space 1, there's a extended sequence of like Hammond traps slasher in an escape pod, right? And it's just a generic slasher in the original game. In this one, they've changed it so that it's the other member of the security team that came with you, and he gets to have dialogue about like, is that still Chen in there? Maybe he's fine. He's not fine, Hammond. He is a monster now. And so on and so forth. Also, big improvement on Kendra Daniels. Remember her character? She was like a fucking asshole to everyone for all of Dead Space 1's runtime. She is no longer. She's cool now.
Wait, is that the final fucking jerk, final asshole in one at the right before the final battle?
Yes.
Yeah, her. She sucked. Fuck her.
Yeah, she's much better now.
Well, I don't want her to be better. She sucks. She deserves everything she got.
No,
but yeah,
I mean,
okay.
Okay, Wooly, when you get to the end of the game and the character that sucked ass the whole game turns out to still suck ass, that's not super effective.
Right, okay. Up until that point has been improved even. Yes, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that's Dead Space 1. It's good. It's really good. I just hope they put out a patch to help the stuttering on the personal computer. I'll be playing more of that and more Hi-Fi Rush this week. Go down to twitch.tv/PatStaresAt. The channel. Go watch it.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when we were talking about the devs tweets showing off like different weapons and interactions in the game, where they're like, "Hey guys, we're remaking Dead Space. Here's how the Ripper works currently. What do you think? How are the sounds? Does it feel okay?" You know, and like they're actively taking feedback on like the weapon to weapon, just like how it fires and every little bit, which, you know, shares a level of concern for getting the feel right, because, you know, if you go 1-to-1, like there's obviously things where there's room to be improvements above what it was, so but you don't want to, like, I don't know, fuck up like an entire like system or ricochet sequence or something. So it shows they cared with those tweets, I guess. So it's like, that's a good sign, I think, if you see somebody kind of going to the public like, hey, we want to make sure every little bit here feels right. Make sure the stomp feels heavy.
The stomp is still good.
Good.